Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Wednesday, May the 29th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Greg Smith is back in the producer's chair today. We're looking forward to speaking with you on a topic of your choosing. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So our final check-in at the Memorial Cup, Saginaw, Michigan. Two young fellas from this province, of course, playing for the Drummondville Voltigeurs, Riley Mercer and Matteo Rotondi. It's done. Lost yesterday 5-3 to Moose Jaw, so that's it for their adventure at the Memorial Cup. So I guess it's pretty lofty heights anyway. There's only 4 teams get to play every year in the Memorial Cup, but their quest is over. All right, with the NBA playoffs deep, almost into the finals now, talk about a couple of generational players battling it out for Rookie of the Year in 1980. Larry Bird beats out Magic Johnson. That announcement came on this date in 1980. And how about those Blue Jays? I know, they stink for the most part. But base running is coming back, or stolen base running is coming back a little bit. Certainly nowhere back to the years in the 80s, for instance, when it was all the rage. But it was on this date in 1990 that Ricky Henderson breaks Ty Cobb's stolen base record with his 893rd swipe. All right, let's talk about adventure for a second. Certainly one of the most adventurous tasks may be to try to summit Mount Everest. It was on this date 71 years ago in 1953 that New Zealander Edmund Hillary and his Nepalese Sherpa, Tenzing Norgay became the first to summit Mount Everest. Now, the exhibition itself was huge. So it consisted of over 400 people, 362 porters, 20 Sherpa guides, 10,000 pounds of baggage. There was a cameraman alongside. His name was Ton Stobart. He describes Hillary as a skeleton as tall as I was, a hatchet-thin face, and seemed tied together with steel. Here's a quote from some of the writings from Hillary after the summit. I noticed a crack between the rock and the snow sticking to the east face. I crawled inside, wriggled and jammed my way to the top. Tenzing slowly joined me. We moved on. I chopped steps over bump after bump, wondering a little desperately where the top could be. Then I saw the ridge ahead, dropped away to the north, and above me on the right was the rounded snow dome. A few more whacks with my ice axe, and Tenzing and I stood at the top of Everest, the tallest point on Earth. And of course, it's some 29,000 plus feet above sea level. Just amazing stuff. Nowadays, it's a real tourist attraction. You can see some of the images if you want to Google it up after the show about the log jams at the top. And, of course, many have perished trying to make their way up the mountain. But here's an interesting one. Of course, immediately Edmund Hillary was knighted. Norgay was not a citizen, so he was given what they call the George Medal, exceptional gallantry absent a military enemy. And so, of course, Hillary was recognized 4 decades later. And here's an interesting recognition afforded to Tenzing Norgay. So there's a peak, I can't remember the name, but about 25,000 feet tall, named after him, and the largest mountain range on Pluto, named after Tenzing Norgay. 71 years ago, they make their way to the summit. Sticking with adventure, and not to be callous, because we know search and rescue is in place for the obvious reasons. And yes, we can talk about the absence of real search and rescue capacity in Labrador. This one is about going down to visit the Titanic in a deep-sea submersible. We all remember the Ocean Gate disaster. Everyone on board the Titan, when it imploded, they all died, of course. So now there's an Ohio billionaire. His name is Larry Connor. He's a real estate investor. He's going back down. He says he wants to show that it can be done safely, so him and some other guy have spent $20 million to build this deep-sea submersible. Here's the comment. It costs millions of dollars to enter into the recovery stage after the implosion of the Titan. When people take these extraordinary risks, should there be some insurance liability held by them as opposed to we foot the bill? Now, there's a vast difference in getting lost in the woods or getting turned around on your snowmobile, what have you. And lots of terrible stories have emanated from some of these searches and consequently recovery missions. But when you take this extraordinary risk to row across the Atlantic, to go down to the Titanic, should that not come with them taking on some of the liability, financially speaking? Anyway, you want to talk about it? We can do it. Oh, I meant to do this in the sports-related opening. For some 40 years, people who have been in and around St. John's, whether or not you play tennis, you will recognize the green belt bubble. They're tearing it down. Now, it's lasted some 40 years, and interestingly, apparently these bubbles, these domes or pieces of infrastructure, they're not intended to last 40 years. Why? Because the EV exposure does away with their reliability. But apparently with the lack of sun in and around St. John's, it was able to last that long. So they're going to build some sort of new structure. Initially built to cover 4 courts, expanded to cover 6 courts. That first construction, I think, 1985. So they're calling on club members and former players to come out for one last hit Friday evening between 5 and 8 p.m. and bring along a donation so they can aid the fundraising effort for the new clubhouse. Again, remember when the Davis Cup was here last year? That's the International Men's Team Tennis Trophy. So on July the 2nd to the 3rd, the Billie Jean Cup, which was won by the Canadian women's team in 2023, will be at Riverdale Tennis Club on display. So get down and get your photo taken with the Billie Jean Cup. All right, let's keep going. Yesterday, an announcement regarding early childhood education. I'm pretty sure social media has made us dumber. So the story that came out about it, what's happening here is they're going to allow for medical benefits to be afforded to early childhood educators. And some of the reaction is, oh my God, I'm paying medical benefits for babysitters. It's not just looking after your kids. This is a pretty important component to get them off on the right foot before they get into the K-12 system. If you look around, the documentation and the research is clear. About 90% of your brain is formed or developed by the age of 5. And so the formative years are critically important. And we've got to get this right. If we're going to need to see the appropriate rate of pay, there has been a new wage grid announced, and some benefits available, then that might make a big difference in trying to attract and to retain early childhood educators. Pretty important stuff in my personal estimation. So you have to be working for a minimum of 3 months at a regulated provider. Then that includes educators, trainees, other staff members, and other family care, child care providers. Okay, so the benefit will be afforded to some 1,600 people that are currently in the workforce. And remember, 57% of the educators reported being unable to access health or dental benefits through their work. Consequently, some 42% of them said they were entertaining the thought of leaving the profession. So yes, we can talk about the number of spaces that have been created, what the net gains have been, and the plans for another couple of thousand daycare spaces. But getting this right is going to be important. Now, apparently there's another announcement coming up this morning. We already have a list of people that have, put their name forward to the provincial government to talk about the fact they are looking for childcare space. Now, I believe the announcement today is going to be the next stage or step in this process to help connect you with the daycare space. How that's going to work, don't know. And how the medical benefits are going to work, we also don't know. Very little in the way of details associated with this announcement, but apparently the benefits will be available come the fall. So if you work in the industry and or you're simply a parent or an expecting parent, trying to find a daycare space, we're happy to take your call. So we heard that announcement yesterday from Provincial Minister of Education, Crystalline Howell. What we have not heard a lot of from the Minister and or anyone in government is about some of the other concerns in the K-12 system, and they are absolutely real. The level and the prevalence of violence in schools. You've heard from Trent Langdon at the NLTA. We hear this story shared privately by teachers. It's completely out of hand. Then looking at the issue regarding the trend since 2003, not just learning loss during the pandemic, but since 2003, the decline in scores or grades for math, science, and reading must be troubling for everybody. Our success as a province is going to heavily rely on the quality and the caliber of education our youth are getting. And then you even look further to a report that's been kicking around for coming up on 5 or 6 years regarding chronic absenteeism. We are in a bad spot on some of these issues in the K-12 system. So you want to talk about it? Let's do it. Okay, nurse practitioners. So there's now comment coming not just from our local provincial association, but also the national association, and wondering why the province has not responded to a proposal put forward by the Nurse Practitioners Association of Newfoundland and Labrador about this, and it's a fundamental one. They're asking for nurse practitioners to work in the private sector to be able to hang out their own shingle, but to bill the province directly for care offered to patients. Now, apparently, Nurse practitioners can be charging upwards of $75. If you've got the money, good for you. But for many, that could be a barrier. So they're not talking about direct billing to MCP. I've been set straight by the local association on that front. They're talking about something a little bit different, but it's public funding, no matter how you slice it, whether it be in blended capitation models or whatever the case may be. The concern, as voiced by the Registered Nurses Union and others, and the government, and here's their stance, is at this moment in time, they're not willing to do that kind of public funding. They're worried about the drain on the public system. Kind of makes sense to me. The association doesn't think that that's going to be the outcome, but if I'm graduating as a nurse practitioner and I know I can set up my own operation, kind of dictate my own hours and the numbers of patients I see, and bill the province directly, I'm still directly involved in primary care, but the province is, I think, deathly worried that there'll be a huge drain in the public system, which is already strained to the max. So I think it'd be helpful. The province is leaning on these collaborative care teams and the collaborative care clinics and or the primary care teams. But isn't there a way for the nurse practitioners to still fit into the system, get people the help they need, ease the burden on the extended amount of time people are waiting to get assigned a family doctor or a collaborative care clinic or whatever the case may be? That's a big one. You want to talk about it? Let's do it. Okay. There's a lot to this story here. So apparently they're going to begin moving patients from the Corner Brook Hospital into the newly constructed Western Memorial Regional Hospital, and it's going to start on Sunday. So a couple of details. They're looking to avoid some of the routes that they're going to take for, see if I can find that particular thing. Oh, here we go. Got it right here. So they're telling us that the route is going to include Brookfield Avenue, West Valley Road, O'Connell Drive, University Avenue, Corporal Pinson Memorial Drive, and of course the Lewin Parkway between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Sunday. They're asking you to please avoid that area, if at all possible, on Sunday. Also, if you need health and emergency services, ask to proceed to the new hospital starting at 6 a.m. on Sunday, the 2nd of June. Now, Eddie Joyce, the member for Humber Bay of Islands, is pointing out a pretty big issue, and this includes the entirety of the world of long-term care. Mr. Joyce is talking about what he calls a very dark cloud looming. Now, there was, apparently, we thought this was a change, but apparently simply a pause. Some 5 years ago, we were told the practice of moving long-term care patients to an outside region was halted, but apparently it's simply paused. Some of the facilities in the area are saying, until we can find a bed, we're either going to move your loved one to another long-term care facility, possibly outside the region, and if that's not something that you're satisfied with, you're told to take your loved one home, which is easier said than done. But here's the crux of the matter. How many hospital beds today are currently occupied by someone who needs to be and wants to be and should be in a long-term care facility? But we don't have the staff to accommodate the bed. We always say there's no beds. But it's not the fact there's not an actual physical bed, it's that we don't have the staff. So that goes all the way through the system. The trickle down is real. So, for instance, how many people who could be admitted aren't because we don't have a bed because someone's in it that belongs in a long-term care facility? How many surgeries have been postponed for the exact same reason? So this has had a big impact throughout the healthcare system, period. It seems to me that if we get the staffing levels right, and that's why so many jobs have been offered to graduates into the long-term care world, if we get it right on the staffing levels there, then we'll probably do better to deal with some of the backlogs elsewhere, surgery and otherwise. So that's a big one. And if, Eddie, you're interested in talking about it and the stories you're hearing in your area, you know you're welcome on the program. But that's a big one. And, of course, add to it the pending review or the report on the review of long-term care, personal care, and there's a lot inside that envelope as well. Okay, let's take it to the water. Yesterday we spoke about the fact that there's a new report out there. One of the co-authors is George Rose, a marine scientist that many people in this province will be familiar with. This was a report that was published in the Canadian Journal of Fisheries and Aquatic Sciences. They're talking about northern cod. Sometimes I think we conflate the Gulf cod stock and the northern cod stock, but this one is about northern cod. And Mr. Rose says that through some of the tracking that they've done on some 90 large northern cod, equipped with whatever tags that can transmit data to satellites, he says it looks like the cod have gone back to their historical migration patterns. And he sees this as an encouraging development. And so he also goes on to say that it might indeed lead to a commercial fishery sometime in the future. Now, we can all think back to 1992 and the overfishing that led to the cod moratorium, but apparently there's some sort of rebound here. Good news. The tale of the two stocks becomes a huge contrast when you look at the report coming out of cod in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. So 5 years ago, the warning bell was sounded. And if you want to take on either of these, we can talk about it. DFO said 5 years ago that extinction of the species in the Gulf was not just possible, but it was probable. And now there's an updated report looking at that spawning stock of Gulf cod. So here's the quote. We are not seeing any recovery of the spawning stock biomass of that stock. It is still experiencing really high levels of natural mortality, especially at the adult stage of life. So they say it's a very dire situation. Between 60 and 70% of cod in the southern Gulf do not survive beyond the age of 5 and are likely to be eaten by the huge herds of gray seals in the region. The most likely cause of the increase in natural mortality is an increased predation by gray seals. So again, we can't do a whole lot in the short term to control the temperature of the water, and or sunlight, and or sea ice, and or phytoplankton. But I know some people will roll their eyes every time the issue regarding seals is mentioned. But every report recently, and a new Senate committee report on seals, unless there's some political will, nothing's going to happen. Right? Even DFO has kind of said the quiet parts out loud. There could be one of the levers we can pull regarding the seal population. And in the Senate committee, just one more reminder. You know, it's one thing to demand a strategy to be in place in the next 6 months, but they're talking about threatening some of the propagandist outlets with doing away with your taxes exempt status if you continue to spread the absolute lies that they use as a fundraising tool. So the tale of two stocks, northern cod potentially on the rebound to lead to commercial fishery, the cod stock in the Gulf nearing extinction. Extinction. Wow. Anyway, you want to take it on? Let's go. And what's this here? Okay, let's go to the roads for a second. Apparently the province, of course, they changed the legislation to allow for ride sharing to come to town, much to the chagrin of the traditional cab companies. But Uber, and then another one called Cabby, and now there's two more that have been given the green light to proceed. I don't know how watered down the market will become very quickly, but one called Ride Technologies Inc. and Grand Hub X are now allowed to operate their ride-sharing services in the province. So whether you're in the taxi industry or have your first or renewed experience with the ride-sharing apps and your thoughts on it, your position on their place in the market, we can take it on. All right. Curiously, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I shouldn't be surprised with anything anymore. When the announcement was made about the addition, well, we're going to an RFP to see how quickly we can get 10 speed cameras installed, and a private vendor will be responsible for the installation, the monitoring, and the back-end work, and it'll be tickets, not warnings. I think it's a good thing. I'm going to suggest, just use a round number. If I had 10 emails yesterday, after our conversation with Minister Sarah Studley, and through the overnight, if there was 10 emails, even though it's more like 50, then I'm going to think that about 60% were completely opposed for a variety of reasons, but I'm not so sure why that would be the case. If the overall and the intended goal is to slow people down, then isn't that a good thing for all of us? Yes, the concerns about being able to read the license plate. Yes, the concern with it wasn't me operating the vehicle, and the pending court challenges that we'll see come to bear because of some of these concerns and when the camera was calibrated and all the rest of it. If you want to talk about it, we can do exactly that. And lots of reaction coming in to the PC candidate, Lynn Paddock's victory out in Bayvert, Green Bay. Lots to discuss on that front. And even just the tone, the tenor, and what seems to be a pretty frustrated, if not angry electorate for a variety of fairball reasons. Cost of living is out of control. You know, we've got a crisis everywhere you turn. And so whether this was a preference for one candidate, one party or not, or simply the need and the want for change, the frustration of the voters here and across the country, because you hear the stories and see them as much as I do. And I'm not sure if we're going to talk about the Fogo Island ferry woes. We had a conversation with the mayor, Andrew Shea, yesterday. He's extremely frustrated and disappointed about the interim solution as their big ferry is taken off the run. And the Fogo Island residents, and maybe some for Change Islands, they didn't identify which island they live on, sending emails, and they are furious. And of course, you know, we could talk about the ferry service to very small, sparsely populated islands, but in Fogo Island, it's a success story. It's got an economy of scale, and of course, with the tourism season and the amount of transport trucks going to and fro the islands on that run, they have really been hampered by this. So Mayor Shea certainly sounded off what many of his residents were saying via email overnight. We're on Twitter, where VOCM Upline follows her. Email address is upline@vocm.com. Our favorite is when you join us live on the air. Oh, here we go. Wayne Collins is in the queue. He's a former mayor. He wants to talk about the ferry system as well. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. This will begin this morning on line number 2. Saying good morning to former Mayor of Fogo Island. That's Wayne Collins. Good morning, Wayne. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for taking my call there.
Happy to do it.
I appreciate it so much. And I guess you and your listeners are somewhat familiar with the situation we've got here the last few days. Many individuals have expressed their disappointment, discouragement, and so on as to the changes to our ferry system. And it's just unacceptable, Patty. I mean, this small vessel any time of the year is not acceptable, especially during this time whereby we got the crab fishery, the Fogo Island Co-op has been being affected so much, the various businesses like the truckers and so on, and the tourism industry. It's devastating. And I personally would like to see or ask you if you could get the minister on to explain or try to explain to us and try to justify why this decision has been made, because there's many more appropriate alternate solutions to this than what they have done.
We've invited the minister on. We're told that might happen today, so we'll keep following up because I'd like to get some answers for you folks as well. So just to paint the picture so people know what we're talking about. Not to call the veteran and the legionnaire lemons, but they've been problematic since they've been on the runs. And now the veteran is back in dry dock for whatever work. We have no real idea, don't know the timelines of the repairs to be completed. But the concerns that the folks on Fogo Island have is that with the much smaller fare being brought in as the backup to the veteran, it's so small that it's jeopardizing not only the tourism season, but the amount of transport trucks that are going to and fro Change Islands, Fogo Island, and the Big Island of Newfoundland. So that's the basics of where we are. Now, the thought is that in the past, maybe the Legionnaire could have gone out to the Fogo Island run, and Belle Island would be serviced by the Flanders and the Beaumont Hamel. Of course, the fire aboard the Flanders has maybe complicated that issue somewhat, but let's see if we can get the minister to offer us some explanation as to how they've arrived at this decision. But just paint a picture. You're someone who's out there. Exactly what has the implication been? It's one thing to be delayed, one thing for people to be upset, but it's quite another if it's going to potentially hamper the economy.
Yeah, I mean, as recently as last evening, Patty, there's indication and requests coming to our town and so on, looking for priority for crossing on the vessel, like from the trucking companies, to ensure that they get on and get across in sufficient time or adequate time so they can carry on with their business. Now, the most devastating thing would be to the Fogo Island Co-op, and as recently as this morning, the first trip leaving Fogo Island in that smaller vessel, and in total there was only about 25 vehicles on it, and 6 spaces were reserved for Change Islands, of course. So that left with around 20 or so for Fogo Island, and indications are that after the first trip left Fogo Island this morning, there was another 2 trips in the lineup waiting to get across. So it's just not practical. And we have, I'm sure, like all of us, the people of Fogo Island, Change Islands, and many or all of your listeners, feel that there's a better solution to this. I mean, this is obviously pretty blatant in our opinion, to do something like this now to Fogo Island, to bring in this small vessel. It's probably one of the worst scenarios we've ever faced here with respect to ferry crossing, the availability to get across. I mean, anybody now with appointments. And to throw something else into the mix, Patty, is the occasional or sometimes frequent crossings that you have to make during the late evening for emergency crossings. This is something that has to be changed immediately. We cannot accept this, and the people of Fogo Island, Change Islands have to look at this very seriously. As we got the town has organized a meeting for tomorrow night at the stadium, a public meeting, and depending on how that goes, of course, and what the government will do in advance of this, I mean, we have to take this further. We cannot sit back and accept this deplorable change to our transportation system.
I always find the ferry conversation frustrating and complicated because, people want what they want where they live, whether it be for, getting to medical appointments or what have you. But then what do you make of the thought, Wayne, that this might be, in essence, pitting one community against another? Because if you get the Legionnaire, then, of course, the Belle Island users won't have it. So how do you think politically we should be able to manage the fleet? Because there is not a load of ferries just bobbing around out in Lewisport waiting to backfill for the veteran, the Legionnaire, or any of the vessels. So on the political front, how do you think to best manage?
Yeah, I know there's issues, but I'm sure that the people on both islands, or all three islands, so on James Islands and Bill, we're all reasonable people, and that there's better solutions than what's been put in place here today. I mean, if the Legion Air were to come to Fogo Island, I'm sure with the smaller vessel that's here now, and going back to Bill Island with the other vessel, the Volmont, would suffice for a short period of time. At least they'd have two vessels, and we would have the larger vessel that can accommodate the bigger trucks and the it's terrible to expect this small vessel to be able to cope with the type of traffic that we have moving to and from Fogo Island and our change ons. There's many trucks coming daily, crab being trucked in, crab being trucked out, various freight trucks. It's ongoing. I mean, I feel that the people of Bill Island would understand our situation and be sympathetic towards it and work with us to make changes to improve it. And I'm terribly, terribly disappointed to see what Minister Abbott has done or allowed to happen, along with his government, to downgrade our system in the way it is today.
Point taken, Wayne, and we'll send another email along to see if we can confirm a time with Minister Abbott to see what we can glean from his thought process on this one. Anything else you'd like to add this morning, Wayne, before we say goodbye?
Yeah, just like to say, unless there are changes made, I'm sure the people of Fogo Island Change Islands will not sit back and just accept this and move on. We have to continue on and impress upon government and do whatever else is available to us to bring this back to where it was, or better than where it was, because the transportation system certainly isn't adequate now and has never been to where it should be, because, I mean, a number of us on both islands can discuss it with whomever we want to in this province, and there's always a fear from people wanting to come to Fogo Island that the transportation system, the ferry system, is an issue. Now, we've had it pretty good over the last summer or so with two vessels. We've had a lot of people moving to and from the island. But I mean, to lose that part of the industry, the tourism industry, it should not occur. I mean, people want to come to Fogo Island. We've had them here, and we're continuing to get them here, but they will not come if we don't see improvements to this ferry system.
And it's not like the folks on Fogo Island haven't protested in the past. I mean, it's not that long ago they were protesting the schedule. So we'll see what becomes of it. I appreciate the time this morning, Wayne. Thanks for the call.
Thanks for taking the call, Vinny. Good
You're
morning.
welcome. All the best. Bye-bye. It's Wayne Collins. He's the former mayor of Fogo Island. Let's take a break. When we get back, there's a caller in the queue who wants to talk about the cost of travelling for healthcare. Don't go.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Just before we get to the callers, it begins to ramp up in frequency, emails regarding the recreational food fishery. And wondering if I know what the dates are. The short answer is no, I don't. They haven't been announced yet as far as I know. And it's always confusing because last year the dates were announced on the 20th of June and the season opened up on the 1st of July. I would imagine we're going to look at very similar timeframes this year. Last year there was 39 days folks were allowed out on the water. Yes, of course, there was a petition tabled by Clifford Small in the House of Commons regarding an expansion of the recreational food fishery. Don't know if that's going to get any traction inside of DFO. So the basics are, as soon as we hear at VOCM, of course, it'll be on the website, in the newscast and on this program, but we have no idea what the recreational food fishery dates are as of yet. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Hello?
Hello there.
Yes. I'm calling because I'm really desperate and depressed because I have a problem there. Like, I'm a patient with art problem. I was that bad one time they had to fly me into St. John's, and I used to always go back and forth to St. John's on taxi and stay at the extended stay. But now I can't get to stay at extended stays because they're all full up. So apparently I spend over $100 a month for my medication. Plus I spend, it would cost me $100 and some odd dollars for the taxi. So if I got to get a hotel, that's another $100 and something dollars. I just don't have that kind of money, because I'm a senior and I live by myself, and with the cost of light bill, phone bills, and everything else, I just can't do it. So I'm stressed right out, and I was wondering if possible that you knew anyone in town that like a bed and breakfast or somebody that had a room to spare, if they could help me out.
Off the top of my head, I can't say that I do. Have you explored some of the cost recovery through the medical transportation assistance program that the government offers?
Well, I tried the other year, and they just told me to keep my bills, and they would send them in, but I never got no reply back.
Okay. I have a phone number if you'd like to follow up, but I will put this out to the listening public today, that you hear this lady's voice, and you're a senior citizen, right, ma'am?
Yes, I am, and like I said, I live alone, and I'm really depressed and with my heart problem, the diabetic, and everything that's piling up on me. I just can't take it anymore.
Okay, let's see if we can help you out. Just a couple of very quick questions for you. Do you have an appointment scheduled with the cardiologist or for a dye test or something? Do you have something on the books?
I have a letter there to go back to see my heart doctor. I was in the health science for 11 weeks.
Okay.
Really bad. I was that bad. They used to have to use the pills to revive me.
Oh my.
And I tell you, that was really hard. And now, like I said, with all this stress coming on me and all this, medical problems, I just don't know where to turn.
Well, we're going to see if we can help you.
All this expense, like I said, with medications, traveling back and forth on taxis, and everything. If I got to go to a hotel, I haven't got the money for that.
I understand. So where are you calling from?
Catalina.
Okay, so what would be helpful for someone listening this morning, whether we talk about transportation to help you get in and out of Catalina to St. John's, and if anybody listening has anywhere that you can point us, and we can make some calls on this caller's behalf to find whether it be a bed sitting room or somewhere safe and clean that she can stay while she comes in to get some treatment. Do you have a specific date when you need to be in St. John's?
I had to be in St. John Monday.
This coming Monday?
Yes, so like I said, it's not giving me much time.
Okay.
I got to come in Monday because my appointment is early Tuesday morning.
Okay. All right. So let's see here. You're going to be here on, let's see. So you'll be here on the 3rd of June for appointment on the 4th of June. Okay. Leave this with me. We have your number.
Okay.
And we're going to anxiously await for someone listening that is willing and wanting to help. So whether it be to find some accommodations for you, and maybe somewhere that will be able to help you out with some food and getting in and out of the hospital, or maybe in and out of Catalina. So I'll call you back personally as soon as I hear anything. If anything comes up that's helpful, we will get back to you, I promise.
Yes, maybe some listener in St. John's that hear this, my problem, probably, if they got a spare room or whatever, I would kindly appreciate, if I could get one or something.
Fingers crossed that I get some good news here. And when I have something for you, well, if I'm still live on the air, we'll have Beth call you back. But if not, I'll call you back. So for folks listening, you've heard the plea. Can you please help? Because not only does she need to get in to see her heart doctor, it's causing enormous stress. So we'd like to be able to help remove some of that stress and give her some good news. So you stay tuned, and I'm hoping that someone is going to be willing or able to step up and help you out. And we'll get back to you, okay?
Yes, if anyone that can help me, they can always call you and get my number.
100%. And we'll connect you, and I'm hoping that happens this morning. So fingers crossed, and for the good folks listening, if you can be of assistance here, please do exactly that. If I had a spot, I'd put you up. My house is up to our neck, and I'd love to help you personally, and I'm going to see if I can't get you some help. So you stay by the phone, stay tuned to the program, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Okay, sir. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
I hope we can help. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I know it's a big ask, right, to open up your home to someone who you don't know, but you heard the plea, and it seems to me this is pretty straightforward and nothing to be worried about, and I'm going to opine that this is a lovely lady that just needs a little bit of help. So let's see if we can figure it out. Let's go to line number 1. JC, you're on the air. Good morning, line number 1.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
I'm here to offer my opinion as a teenager on Fogo Island with the ferry situation.
Okay. Go right ahead.
It's very difficult as a teenager on Fogo Island with a 30-vehicle ferry, like having to travel for sports and for school and those kind of situations.
Of course, just describe how the ferry system has interrupted some things that you were hoping to do on the island of Newfoundland. So give us some examples of how it's impacted your life.
So yesterday in my school, there was supposed to be an elementary sports day, but due to the ferry, our school couldn't go. And we have Rangers coming up this weekend, and it's a big event, so there's multiple students, and we don't know if we're all going to get to go.
And so you know that you can't go, or are you worried that the delays and the priority system isn't going to work for you and your friends?
We're just worried, and it's very hard when we have appointments and other priorities.
How frequently do you go on and off of the island?
Once a week.
Once a week, okay. And has it been a concern in the past, or you think that this new circumstances with the veteran being off the run, this is the problem? But in the past, it's been pretty reliable and it's worked for you?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just now the ramp is broke already, and we only got this ferry yesterday. So it's very hard for our seniors and young students that are traveling for sports and other activities with this ferry situation.
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 14.
You're 14. And okay, so the ferry concern, I totally get where you're coming from. And to be able to have your activities hampered by not being, have a reliable service that you can count on to get on and off, I completely understand. As a 14-year-old, and now feel free to tell me to mind my own business if I'm asking too much, what do you see the future for you and your other friends in and around your age to be living and working on Fogo Island into the future? How do you see the future working out for you on the island?
Well, I'm planning on coming back to Fogo Island after I graduate school.
Okay.
But I'm feeling like it's going to be quite difficult.
How so?
To travel to and from, and especially with the seniors, and the weather is also another big impact.
Right.
So during the winter, the ferry is often not running.
Yeah, it's obviously, when we talk about the weather, that's something that none of us can control. Yeah. So that's always going to be a problem. But things like the schedule and when the big ferry that is the veteran isn't operating, then, of course, that complicates things, whether it be for the fishery or other businesses where we're using transport trucks. And, of course, even people that just want to go to the island or go to Newfoundland for whatever reason, as opposed to, there's medical appointments and the like, and there's tournaments and things that people might miss. So I understand where you're coming from this morning, JC. Just remind us of the upcoming events that you might not be able to get to.
Graduation is on Friday. Sports day. Ball hockey.
Okay.
Rangers.
So lots of stuff.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time. Anything else you'd like to talk about this morning?
No, that's it.
I appreciate the call. Thanks, JC. Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right. What was I going to say? I had something there to throw out. How are we doing out there, Beth? So I said Greg Smith was producer, but Beth Fagan's in the producer's chair today. She's been recently trained in to take on the task, which is a handful, to say the very least, so appreciate Beth's time. All right. Let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, plenty of time for you. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hi, how are you today?
Okay, thanks. How about you?
Not too bad. I have a few problems here. I'm living in Newfoundland Labrador housing.
Mm-hmm.
I've been reported several times. My grandchildren aren't allowed to come visit me or my son. They're not allowed on my property according to Newfoundland Labrador housing. I was outside with my friend listening to music one day with the music going in my car. The next door neighbor came over off the head because this was 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I shouldn't be having music going. The other day I came home with my car. I parked her. I ran in the house to pick up something and come back out, and he's over yelling because I left the car idling for 10 minutes. Last year I have a motorcycle. Last year I put the wrong gas into my motorcycle. So I drained the gas out, but I had to leave it running for a bit to burn off the wrong gas, and he came over flipping about that.
Just a couple of quick questions before we go too far. So why is it that you're not allowed to have your grandchildren visit?
Oh, because I can't put them on my lease because they only come visit every now and then, right? But they told me that they're not allowed on my premises. My worker with Newfoundland Labrador Housing said that they're not allowed on my premises whatsoever.
So the kids can't pop by and have a bite of lunch?
No, not allowed.
Strange.
Not allowed. I don't know what to do anymore, Patty. I don't know. I am very frustrated over all this. He's taken pictures of my house and my land without my permission. I told him I did not want no pictures taken of anything. And he takes pictures and sends them in the Newfoundland Labrador Housing all the time. I don't know what to do anymore. I've called the RCMP to see if they can interfere. I have to go get a peace bond put on them, and then after that they can interfere. I don't know. I bought a tent garage from Canadian Tire to put on my property. He went and called Newfoundland Labrador Housing about it and the town about it because I didn't have a permit to put it up with the town. But you don't need a permit for a tent garage. I wanted to store my stuff in there, like my lawnmower, my snow blower, and all this stuff. But no, I'm not allowed a thing on my property, not a thing.
I'm still confused about the grandkids issue, to be honest with you, and I can't visualize.
It's very frustrating. It is. You know, if you can't have your grandchildren over for a meal, or if you can't see them, what are you supposed to live for?
Yeah, and no one's actually given you a reason. So are people living in housing not allowed to have visitors? I've never heard that before.
I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not allowed to have my son and his children over to my house. I am not allowed. And it's very, very frustrating. I got reported again the other day by him to Newfoundland Labrador Housing because my son was out working on the car for me, changing my tires and that, but he's not allowed. So they're coming out next week, and they want to inspect everything, and I'm not allowed to have nothing here belong to my grandchildren or nothing. Now, I don't know what to do. There's not a house in my area that I can rent. There's nothing available. I am so frustrated over all this. I don't know what to do anymore. And my grandchildren are with CFYS at times, and they consider my house a safe house for them. But now they're not allowed here. What am I supposed to do?
It would be helpful if you were even given a reason as opposed to, no, you're simply not allowed. Like, is there anything in your past as a tenant or your relationship with the grandkids that social workers have deemed to be a problem or dangerous or something?
No, they're safe with me. This is why it's called a safe house. They're allowed here. They bring them here without questioning. They just, right? Whenever something happens, they'll bring them to me. Because I don't have no criminal record. I have nothing. This is their safe place, but now it's not allowed to be a safe place for them.
Who is the person that designated it a safe place?
CFYS.
Okay. And so has your caseworker spoke with Newfoundland Labrador Housing to talk about the situation? Because if the social workers have deemed that to be a safe place for your grandkids, and then housing all of a sudden disallows them from even visiting, which seems like extraordinary measures to me. So can the social worker do anything on your behalf?
Well, there's already been a letter sent in to them, my gosh, back when? I say 2015 or 16. maybe a bit later, I'll say 17 or 18, stating that this is a safe house and they cannot do nothing to me to evict me or anything because of my grandchildren. But now it's all started over again. Now spring is this is summer. Now my next door neighbor is constantly causing me grief ever since I moved in here. As soon as my son steps foot or his car comes in my driveway, there's reports gone in.
Yeah, it's a strange one. So with the letter in from the social worker, I'd be curious as to understand when that's going to be considered or what the outcome will be. So if you can, let us know what does happen as a result of that letter being sent in. And just for curiosity's sake, so when you say a tent garage, how substantial are we talking? Like, how big is this thing?
It was, you can buy them at Canadian Tire. I call it it's just a tent, and it's steel frames, and you put the tent over the steel frames.
Well, I can picture what a tent is. I'm just wondering how big it is.
I think it was 10 by 20, I'm going to say.
Okay.
Roughly.
Yeah, fair enough. So, listen, do me a favor. When there's any sort of answer offered to the social worker's letter, I'd be curious to know what that looks like, and you let me know.
Okay, that's what I'll do. I'll get a copy of it, and I'll let you know.
Okay, do that.
All right.
Thank you.
And, can I ask you a question about the noise and that?
Sure.
I'm allowed to be on my property at 4 o'clock in the afternoon with the music going in my car, or am I get reported for this all the time.
And then, so who does anything about it? Someone from housing calls you or comes over and tells you to stop?
The next door neighbor phones into Newfoundland Labrador Housing all the time, and that's one prime example. Like, if I run somewhere and I come back and I got to run into the house for a minute, I might just leave the car running and I'll run in to pick up what I got. When I come back out, he's there yelling at me because the car is running. Right? There's no need of this. I don't know what to do anymore here.
Well, the neighbor sounds like a bit of a busybody. So when you talk about having the music on, I mean, is it blaring or?
No, it's not blaring, but it's on in the afternoon. Like, the windows on my car are down, and I had the music going, and we're sitting out on a hot, sunny day. No, not allowed that. And, my car is not a loud car, but the music, but I had it running, and he came over yelling and screaming and everything. Yeah, I can't deal with it anymore. I can't even be in my own house safe. I thought quiet time was between 10 p.m. and 9 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, it's actually 11, but 4 o'clock in the afternoon, people should be able to listen to a few tunes outside. I know I do sometimes in the summertime, in the evening, after supper, what have you. So, maybe it's, sometimes.
Not allowed. It's my neighbor that's causing all the grief.
Yeah, it sounds like, sometimes the best neighbor is a tall fence. So I got to leave it there and get to the break, but please do let me know what happens with the social worker's letter. I'd be curious to find out what the solution is there because, talk about the contrast. The social worker says that's a safe place for your grandkids to be. If and when things go wrong, I'm not going to pry into what's going on with the family. And then housing says they can't visit. I don't think I've ever heard that type of concern inside Newfoundland Labrador housing. But get back to me when you know.
They told me yesterday. So.
Okay.
All right, I'll get back to you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Let's go and take a break. When we come back, the Nazi vote protest for the Inuit fish harvesters, and Lindsay's there to talk about rape mitigation. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 6 and say good morning to the Mayor of Change Islands. That's Paula Flood. Mayor Flood, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Okay, so I'm called in about the ferry this morning. I've been listening, and there's been a lot of good points and brought up. However, we're off to a rough start today. The first trip of the day for 8:30 hasn't left Farewell yet. The first trip from Fogo came to Change Islands, and there were ramp issues, so that was late leaving. And as my understanding now, there's a discussion going on whose trucks should be priority to get on. So. And we were supposed to get our 25% of the deck space, which would equal 6 cars, and then we only got 4 on this morning. So up at our dock this morning, we had people who were in lineup who gave up their spots because somebody else had lobster aboard that had to get to market, so they backed out of line and let somebody go. Medical person, somebody had to go for appointment, so they got priority. They could go, so everybody else got left up there. So these are the day-to-day situations that is just day one, early morning, and it's not going to work. One of my biggest issues with it this time was lack of communication. Last Wednesday, we were told on Monday we would be advised as to what's going on. And in all honesty, and I was speaking to my counterparts in Fogo last night, we were all on Facebook and on Marine Apps searching to see where boats were, and discovered that, one had left and the Comatic was over in Farewell, and the Astron was actually in. We didn't even know she was starting schedule till 5:30 this morning. So I couldn't put my town post up to notify residents that, they're not getting on the ferry this morning. Like, if the normal 13 or 14 go up, there's only 6 getting on when actual 4. So these are the situations. But the biggest one was I last night did not have the emergency number to call the captain if we had an emergency on Change Islands. We don't have a nurse, and we don't have a clinic, and the responders take care of that. So I even tried to reach somebody last night at 11 o'clock on their cell when I could determine where boats were. And I did get the number 10 o'clock this morning. Had we an emergency last night, I would not have been able to reach that boat.
Fair enough. I mean, the communication breakdown is problematic on top of the concerns people have with capacity on the ferries. Describe the kind of commercial traffic you have on Change Islands, because it's one thing for Mayor Shane, former mayors Collins and Foley to describe what's happening on Fogo Island, and I've been there and I've seen how active it can be. But when we talk commercial traffic on Change Islands, how busy is that?
Well, we have fishing enterprises here as well. So, like this morning, people were up trying to get their lobster off the island. Today is our freight day, so that freight truck is sitting in Fogo waiting to come over here with our goods on, so I hope there's no spoilage. There's the ice trucks have to come in with the ice for the fish plant. The bait trucks have to come in with the bait for everybody, and that usually comes in on a transport truck. Because of our reduced trips that we had, I used to have to make special requests, which were granted, for them to come in on that 2 o'clock ferry that they took away. Well, we had 4 trips taken away, really. And in order for us to conduct the fishery when it started with our reduced trips, I used to have to make special requests to let the truck come on with the ice. And like I said, they were granted. But again, it's an extra stress level. So yes, we have a commercial fishery over here. We have tourism. We have lives the same as everybody else. And what you do in the run of a day, we do in the run of a day too, except we have to deal with the ferry. We all know we have to deal with the ferry. However, this situation is probably one of the worst we've found ourselves in a while. Instead of 75 cars a day on the one boat, we only get 30 cars a day now. And when I say that, we don't get 30 cars because we got 2 less this morning. So that's 28 right now. Do you know what I'm saying? If it makes all as it runs, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, ferry service is never going to be perfect. I mean, I think people could acknowledge that. There's going to be breakdowns. There's going to be weather interruptions. There's going to be other issues regarding summer schedule versus winter schedule, those types of things. But can you help me understand how the priority or the prioritization process works? Like, who's at the top of the list for priority? Is it people with medical appointments? Is it commercial traffic? Is it the fishery? Is it freight? What is it?
Medical people have to get letters from their doctors and have it approved and sent to transport so that they can actually go to the front of the line for their chemo treatments and that sort of thing. As for the trucking for us, it's whoever gets to the lineup first. So people have to go up. Like, my first call this morning as mayor from a resident was at 6:30 this morning to see if I knew what was coming and what boat, because they had to get off the island because of an illness. So, you know, it's I don't know what the priority schedule is for trucks for Fogo, But I do know there's a disagreement over there this morning because there's only so many trucks getting on, and people, that's why she's delayed over there. They're trying to decide, like they're having an argument about who actually gets on the boat. So, you know, you can get priority. The ambulance will get priority, but when we take our ambulance out, we have to call the boat back. So that's another situation that's going to be called into play because Fogo uses the boat a lot for ambulance, as do we. And that puts the whole boat off. We now went from the winter one vessel schedule to the summer one vessel schedule. We would usually have a two vessel schedule by now. So that's reduced capacity again for tourists and people traveling to the island, whether it's sports teams or not sports teams, but for Fogo. So, you know, it's going to be impossible to operate. And I'd like to say that, yes, there are ferries and there are issues and it's always been ongoing. The fact is there is not enough in the way of a swing vessel for issues like mechanical breakdowns, maintenance. They knew the veteran had to have maintenance. I know they put the other boat on. I know there are delays, and I know the Flanders had a fire. But they don't have backups to call upon to do the system. And in the original business plan for the Legionnaire and the veteran, the Legionnaire was designated as a swing vessel. Whenever the veteran was down, she was supposed to come here. And two vessels would operate, the Flanders and the Beaumont would operate for Belle Island. For some reason this time, she's not coming. They got two boats. We got a boat that is not sufficient to handle Change Island's traffic, let alone Fogo's traffic. So that's where we're to.
Yeah, I know you mentioned all of the complexities involved at this time, you know, with the fire in the Flanders, but I guess the fundamentals are, as suggested by Mayor Shea yesterday, is that if the smaller vessel that was sent to operate your run was simply sent to Belle Island and the Legionnaire went on your run as designated as the swing vessel, then this would all be gone away. Then it would be gone away for Fogo Island, Change Islands, but then it would simply be these calls coming from Belle Island or the Cove. So I guess that's where the political trick has to be managed. And we have invited the Minister on. Not so sure it's going to happen today. His office is going back and forth with the producers while I'm busy trying to do the live radio. But I'll try to get the answers as best I can, as soon as I can.
Yeah. And I only got one more comment.
Okay.
And right now, we have the people who have to go out for medical appointments now will have to go in a day earlier just to make sure they can make their appointments or their chemo. We also have spaces taken up with the mail truck. They used to just put the mail on the boat and then they could pick it up. But every morning our mail truck takes up a space both ways, and we're only getting 6 spaces. So there are things that could be done to help. But the problem comes down to they do not have enough vessels to operate, especially in times of trouble.
Understood. I appreciate the time this morning, Mayor Flood.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. That's Paula Flood, the Mayor of Change Islands. Let's keep going before the break. Let's go to 5. Lindsay, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you.
Yeah, I like to talk about the rate mitigations that's supposed to be coming in July month.
Sure.
The 2% that we're supposed to get in July month.
Let's see what we're supposed to get?
2% increase on our bills in July month.
Well, if we're talking about rate mitigation in Muskrat Falls alone, then that's one thing. But the other side of it is the rate applications come from Newfoundland Power. So it's going to go up way more than 2.25%. I mean, they've got an application in for 5.5. They got an application in for another 1.5 for next year. They got an application in to increase their rate of return from 8.5% to 9.85%. So if you're talking rate mitigation, that's only Muskrat Falls, not our power bills in full.
Well, I was talking about, like, the way I understood it, like, it's supposed to go to 2 or 2.5% from July the 1st up until July the 1st, 2030. But with all this other stuff now that you're talking about, like it's more than 2.5%, it's more like 13 or 14%.
No, it could be as much as 10.5. So the two.
Okay, 10.5. Any way you look at it, there's still money coming out of our pockets, you know?
Of course, you're 100% right. So the 2.25, just so people understand, is when you add up all of the rate mitigation measures, as people refer to it, even though I think that's a bit of a flimsy reference, so there was a $5 billion loan guarantee from the Harper Conservatives, another $3 billion from the Trudeau Liberals, and then there was another $1 billion extension of the federal loan guarantee, a $1 billion loan, and $3.2 billion associated with revenues that the feds would have got from Hibernia. Add it all up, and what they're saying is it's going to be a 2.25% increase annually. Muskrat Falls related power will begin at 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour, and then you have to add in Newfoundland Power. So it's a big, complicated picture, but it's not going to be as simple as a 2.25% increase, because there's always going to be rate applications coming from Newfoundland Power.
So that's almost like the getting a double sting or the double whammy of things, you know. That's also under the impression that we just get 2.5, that'd be $7 a month increase. And that would be it until 2030. But now it's going to be more than $7 a month. It'll probably be a $10 or $15 a month increase.
Yeah, and that's only simply about Muskrat. So it's approximately 14.2 cents-ish per kilowatt hour at this moment in time. If this rate mitigation plan did not get finalized, the rates would have been about 23.5 cents per kilowatt hour. But yes, you're right. It's not going to be as fundamental as it was presented, because we will see rate hikes because of Newfoundland Power. That was simply the announcement we heard from Jennifer Williams and Minister Parsons was only about Muskrat.
Well, you know, like I felt like I'd been stabbed in the back twice the one day. You know, that's the feeling you get, you know. Because all this now, like, what about next winter now when it starts getting cold again, you know? You're going to have your kids in your house cold, or you can't turn up your heat or anything like that.
That's already the case.
It's going to be like that next winter.
Sure.
You know, kids will be crying because it's cold, and the parents can't afford to pay the bill. They can't afford to turn up the heat.
Yeah. Look, there's already people out there struggling and making decisions between medication and heat and food and paying their bills and all the rest of it. It's going to be, I'll call it, even worse into the future. So,
it's going to be worse, yes. You think it's bad now. We haven't seen nothing yet, according to what they're saying.
Yeah, and I suppose I can't speak for everyone, but for me, when my bill arrives, I look at the bottom number. I'm not all that stressed out about whether or not it's all Muskrat-related measures and or Newfoundland Power, or rate of return, or infrastructure and preventative maintenance. I just know how much I have to pay. And so, yes, to understand the breakdown can be helpful to assign, I don't know if it's blame or what the right word is, but I think most people, when they get their bill, they look at the bottom number. Now, how much is it?
Yeah, that's what I usually look at, too. Like, I'm on equal billing, but that increase as well, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, any way you look at it, you know, you're still money out of your pocket. That is the bottom line.
Yeah.
You know?
Appreciate the time.
Okay, and one other thing now,
Quickly.
like the woman that was on there just now talking about she can't see her grandchildren because one of her neighbors or next door neighbor is a bit of a bully over it, or is throwing his weight around because he doesn't want to see her around, or doesn't want her to play her music 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, you know, this guy must be a bit of a hypocrite or something.
Well, I mean, it might be just a bit of a busybody, and like most things, when I don't know who's calling, what their circumstances are, what all the backstory is, and all the issues that have happened over the years, it's hard to know exactly what to say to some of those types of calls. If it's as fundamental as the lady has said, that the social worker from Child, Youth and Family Services has said that her home is a safe place for those grandkids, but housing won't allow them on the premises, there's something I must be missing. Because I don't really know how to square that circle.
Yeah, there's something wrong there, you know. It's not like she's having a wild party 4 o'clock in the afternoon, day in and day out.
It doesn't sound like it. So, again, hard to know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Lindsay, I got to get off to the break. Anything else very quickly?
No, that'll be all for now. Lots of things I like to talk about, but I haven't got the time if somebody else wants to talk as well as me. Okay?
Yep. Join us again another day.
Yeah, all right then.
Thanks, Lindsay. All the best.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, Lisa, you're next to talk about the Inuit harvester protests that are going to be happening in Nunatsiavut. When? We'll find out. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Lisa, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty. Thank you for allowing me on to call. But my name is Lisa Blandford. I'm an Inuit harvester from Nunatsiavut, and I'm calling on behalf of the 7 Inuit harvesters of Nunatsiavut that had their northern shrimp allocation revoked, causing 30 jobs to be lost in Nunatsiavut. We would like to inform your listeners what we have been doing to try to get to the table to stop this before it's too late. This will cause a grave injustice to Nunatsiavut if 43% of the commercial communal allocation is moved offshore. That is tied to an offshore company, a broker company, and we are hearing to OCI in St. Anthony. So with no response from anywhere in Newfoundland, Labrador, any level of government, organization, or anyone, we have been advocating since May the 1st. So our biggest fear today is that DFO is about to make an announcement in Area 4 and 5 of the northern shrimp fishery any day, any time. So before it's too late, excuse me, we plan to protest. So yesterday in Happy Valley Goose Bay, we had some members out protesting, and in Hopedale as well, there's members out protesting. Today, there's more members going out in Goose Bay, and hopefully along the in Nunatsiavut as well, but our numbers are small and some people are working, and so every day, we can't get a lot of people out, but anybody that can get out, we certainly appreciate that. So we're going to continue that until we can get some answers. Along with the protests, we've started a petition now that we want to present to the Nunatsiavut government, and so we've been circulating that throughout the membership, and we need 100 signatures in order to present to the government to try to get to the tables, to ask this to be stopped or whatever have you. So we're asking this because we've had no consultations on moving this 43% of communal allocation to the offshore with no warning or no indication that this was going to happen. 7 businesses lose their license. They have historical landings. They've been in the fishery for years, since the beginning, some of them. So it runs into 30 jobs lost. There's no problem with the policy. Something went wrong when it came to, first of all, accepting this policy, accepting this application. It goes against the spirit of the communal designation policy, which we did negotiate in good faith, but we didn't have consultations on moving 43% of communal to the offshore.
Can I just ask a question, Lisa? When you say that we negotiated in good faith, was there one representative of a group of inshore harvesters, or was this everybody? Like, who's we?
We is the membership of Nunatsiavut, but when this policy went around to be discussed, well, yes, there were consultations with the full membership. But where there was no consultations was when this application was accepted into this application process, which is in the spirit of community and people inshore, then it should never have been accepted with moving 43% offshore to an offshore factory freezer, also having a company, a broker, all these things in place, which we're hearing now that if DFO opens this and they're able to get to conditions, well, we're hearing that OCI is the license name, so it's actually going into a company name. So that's what we're hearing. It's very fearful because once it's gone, and it belongs to the Inuit of Nunatsiavut, the beneficiaries of Nunatsiavut. So what we're asking for in our petition is that the 7 allocations be reinstated and let us go back to work as we had planned. We found out last minute, what are all these people to do? And we want to have an independent investigation to see what went wrong and how we can prevent these things from happening. And the Inuit harvesters or the whole membership have a right to participate in the process going forward to prevent and keep the spirit of the communal allocation, which means community and people, economic development, jobs. That's what it's meant for. So putting this 43% offshore is not helpful. The government talks about their tax law. Well, 95% comes from employed resident beneficiaries. Well, how is taking these 7 designates out, who has historical landings, and snowballing into 20 to 30 jobs? That's reality. Being taken out. And then where are they going to go to work? I mean, they're fish harvesters. They want to fish. This communal license belongs to the membership of Nunatsiavut, inshore, not offshore, not for any company, not for anyone, but the Inuit harvesters or the full membership of Nunatsiavut.
Understood,
So
Lisa.
that's what we're going to keep. We're going to keep protesting, and until we can get to the tables and have some discussion. And again, DFO is about to open any day. So thank you. Thank you for having me on again. Thank you.
I appreciate your time, Lisa. Good luck. Stay in touch.
Bye-bye.
All right, there you go. Bye-bye. All right, let's keep going. Let's go to line number 3. Steve, you're on the air.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing okay, thank you. How about you?
Good, thank you. Called in this morning just to, I've been listening to your show lately. There's certainly been a lot of talk about Mental Health Awareness Month, being it May, and what I've been doing. And I spoke to your producer, Beth, this morning, and we thought we'd hop on and chat a little bit about that and my experience of having someone who suffered with mental health and addictions, and the end results and what we're doing about it now.
Okay, so you're talking about helping to navigate your child's addiction? Is that what I heard?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Where do you
So,
want to start?
I wrote a book. So about a year, well, it's not about, it's a year, 10 months ago, I lost my son through an overdose. And he dealt with mental health issues. And so when he passed away, he spent a lot of time in, as you can imagine, survival mode. But eventually, I took that and started to write about it, and I wrote a book called My Child is an Addict, Navigating Through Your Child's Addiction. So I completely wrote it for the purpose of hoping to help others, because what happened after I was willing to come in and speak about it, started at a tribute at his funeral, and I told the story that, at all funerals you're trying to say great things, but I just told the story that this is a tragedy as well that had happened. And when I told that story and opened up about it, the amount of people that reached out to me was unbelievable. People from all over the world I didn't know, and some I did, some I didn't, because they felt like, oh, you understand, I'm going through this. And the story was so similar. Of course, everyone had their own story as their own personality type and their interactions with their child or loved one who was dealing with these things. But what I found was like the common denominators were unbelievable. And that kind of inspired me to start writing about it. And I started writing about, here, you're going to go through this. You're probably going to do this. And this is what I did wrong. And this is what I learned to do after. And so I wrote a book just about, some of it is advice-y, if you want to use that term. But a lot of it is also just telling the story of myself, my son Zachary, and all our extended family around that, and how we survived through it, and now taking it, how can we help others?
Steve, right off the bat, my condolences on your loss. I can only imagine the pain, through the torture of watching and navigating the addiction up until the overdose death. Is just, as a parent, that kind of hits me right where it hurts. How old was Zachary?
He had just turned 26. It was 3 Fridays past his 26th birthday.
Steve, I'll tell you what, I really want to have more of a conversation here. I really had no earthly idea what time it was when I clicked on your call. Do you have the time for me to put you on hold? We take a break, come back and rejoin you?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's do exactly that, because I didn't know what time it was when I hit that button. So Steve's on hold. Of course, that's an important story to be told. Let's go ahead and take that break. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's rejoin Steve on 3. Steve, you're back on the air. Is Steve's pot up there by chance, Beth? Steve, you're back on the air. Some sort of complication here. I've got him clicked on. Steve, are you there?
I can hear you.
Okay, now I can hear you. Thank you. Some little gremlin in the system, a little delay in the activation. Okay, so
all good.
We've gone to the beginning point of the story, and the loss of your son to a drug overdose, and the fact that you've written a book. Just a couple of quick questions. Does it also include in the book things like things to look out for, some of the initial red flags that sometimes go unnoticed, because addicts can be really good at hiding it?
Well, it's an excellent question, and red flags is a great term I've used a tremendous amount because when we see in hindsight, the red flags are very clear. Early on, they're not because all you're seeing is a change in behavior. And, as teenagers, anyone who has teenagers or even young adults, you'll notice sometimes, maybe they're just having a mood change or something's different going on at school. And so you tend to make your own excuses for it because at the end of the day, when I saw red flags at the beginning, I did not for a second think, my son's dealing with or heading down the road of active addiction.
Sure.
I just because he was a great kid. You know what I mean? He played hockey, he had a job, he got a driver's license, he did all the things that you want to brag to your neighbors about, look how well my child is doing, and which is a wonderful thing to do. But all of a sudden you see these other, as you said, red flags. You tend to it's a level of acceptance most people I would think are not ready for. And I wrote about that, to say, like, keep an eye on these things. And again, I'm not a therapist or a psychologist or a mental health and addictions expert. I don't have any letters behind my name that qualify me that medically. But I did live it, and I can tell you, as I spoke about before the break, I can tell you that speaking to hundreds, it has to be hundreds at this point, of individuals who approach me and hear all the stories were the same. And that's what really inspired me, that was worth taking that collection of now hard-learned knowledge and say, listen, we're all pretty much going through the same thing. The red flags are the same. The patterns are so unbelievably similar that I could listen to someone start telling me their story, and they start off with things like, I don't know what I did wrong. That's a huge one, the parental guilt. And it goes to, and they did this, and you're not going to believe what they said next. And I could sit there, and I wouldn't do it because they need to be heard. But in my mind, I could listen to them and go like, I can finish your sentence. I know what you're going to say next. And this went on and on and on until I realized that we're all dealing with the same thing. And not enough people are talking about this. We talk about mental health and addictions. People say, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and that's wonderful, and that's very important. But so few are willing to open up about it until they meet someone, say, like me, who they knew lived it, and all of a sudden that creates a comfortable space for them. You'll really understand. So I find that writing the book was basically taking that collection of all these people speaking to me and saying, listen, we're all in the same boat. We're all living the same thing. So my experience from survival to trying to genuinely live past, and the aftermath, if that can help one person, then it was well worth the endeavor.
100%. I mean, I'm always wondering how I should use certain words when we describe these stories, because I don't know if this is making the best of a bad situation, or it's courageous, or it's brave, or it's inspiring. How would you like to be heard? Because I'm not sure which word is more applicable or appropriate than the other, but if I was talking about it, if it was me living it, I would have to summon the courage to tell the story. How do you want people to consider what you've done? Is it to be inspirational, informative, or a badge of courage? How do you think it should be heard?
And people will hear it the way they want to hear it, Patty. When I first, shortly after his funeral in July of 2022, maybe it was about a couple of months later, I did a television program, and it's the first time I kind of went public and told the story. And I was inundated with people with words that you just used. Oh, you're so courageous. You're very brave. How resilient. I appreciate that greatly, very much, and still do. However, I didn't think any of those things doing it. I just thought it was important to tell it. I thought it was just super important to tell it. I didn't know I wasn't trying to exude anything in particular. People received it that way. But, let's be very honest. Honestly, it's cathartic somewhat. It's therapeutic for myself. You don't ever get over a tragic loss like that. You learn to live with it. And so part of my learning to live with it was part of telling my story and Zachary's story. And in turn, I'm learning that I'm telling other people's story and giving them permission then to hopefully tell their own. And so I didn't do it for any of those things, and how people frame it, they'll frame it. And I appreciate, again, that people would be so complimentary to take the time to give you a compliment like that.
Yeah, I was just about to ask whether or not it was therapeutic or cathartic, because that's also complex emotion, So inside of Zachary's story, what can you tell us about when it was acknowledged that there was a problem and that there was maybe help required? How did that unfold? Or did Zachary ever acknowledge that he needed some help and went and got it?
He did. So up to about 18 years old, he was the superstar kid. A summer past his 18th birthday, and I write this story a little bit in the book. The line I use in the book is the first time my son Zach died was shortly after his 18th birthday. Now, he didn't die right away, but all of a sudden, all the things I knew of him started to go away. The warm personality, the big smile, the social activity, all his good friends coming over, all that regular good kid stuff. That's when it started to fade away gradually, and that's when the drug use had obviously started. And I knew he was coping. I knew he was already taking some medication for his challenges with mental health and seeing a specialist and all those things. But it was more of a gradual fade. Is probably the best way I can say it. And he eventually then it just escalated. And so we by the time he was 20, I'm paraphrasing, but somewhere around 20 years old, we knew it was a very serious problem. It was a daily problem at that point.
My mind is racing listening to the story, but I'm glad you're telling it. And so the ultimate takeaway, I guess, just like how everyone has heard and felt different things about what you're doing and how helpful it could be for families, and let's hope that's exactly the case, and I'm sure it will be. Mm-hmm. Before we run out of time and I get pushed up against the news, what are some of the main bullet point takeaways that you want people to consider here?
Well, you can't carry it on your own, number one. If you're trying to bury it and carry it on your own, you're going to likely fail. You're going to fail. You're going to have a meltdown at some point. It's coming. It's just a matter of when. So you got to get out ahead of it as best you can. The other thing, so go get whatever help you can need, and that might be your church group. That could be any kind of therapeutic type of group getting together, or a good trusted friend, or a seasoned professional, whatever works for you. But the other thing that's really important to remember is that it's not your fault. And that is the 100. If I said there's one common theme in every person I've spoken to, is that it's, what did I do wrong? There was somewhere paraphrasing that meant, what did I do wrong? And again, I wrote a whole chapter about, it's not your fault. And even if you might, none of us parents or loved ones are perfect. We all have our shortcomings. However, anything that you're pulling back and saying, looking back, I blame myself for that, I blame myself for that, it's a waste of time. That'll just keep you emotionally stuck. You need to just accept the fact that they were unwell for whatever reasons. You didn't go off and cause their addiction, and you certainly can't cure it. And you need to start finding, and you need to accept that in yourself so you can start moving forward.
Steve, really appreciate you doing this here this morning. And once again, the title of the book, is My Child is an Addict, Navigating Through Your Child's Addiction. And so if you're a family who's dealing with exactly this, consider reading real life experience from a parent who's lost a loved one. And hopefully that can keep that same result for not being the case for some family listening to the program this morning. Thanks for making time, Steve. You're always welcome.
Well, I really appreciate the time. Just tell anyone, StephenLRandall.com. Everything is there about it if you're interested. So I really appreciate you giving me the time, Patty, and I hope your day is great.
The very same to you, sir. Thank you, Steve.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Very quick, before we get to the 11 o'clock news, and Heather, I really appreciate your patience. She wants to talk about the fairies. So the Bishop's College class of 1974 is celebrating 50 years since graduation. So mark your calendar, Thursday, June the 20th. They're going to get together at the Shrine Club on Topsail Road. Doors open at 7 p.m. So they have a Facebook page. Of course, it's Bishop's Class of 1974 reunion page right there on the old crank book. So there's an RSVP required. Admission is $20. Please pay in advance by electronic money transfer. And there's an email address there I'll give out. It's rbishop18@bellaline.net. I have that info on hand if you need to jot it down. Let's take a break. Heather, you're next to talk about the ferries. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Heather, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. I just wanted to have a quick discussion, I guess, about the ferry and what's happening out here for Fogo Change Island.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from Change Island, and I want to throw a brick at the Department of Transportation this morning. This is absolutely absurd, the effects of what this is happening to the traveling public. Speaking of a resident of Change Island, we have to travel off the island for everything. I mean, when you think about just every simple, mundane things of life, even to go and have your blood work done, you have to travel off the island. 6 spaces is not adequate. It is not adequate for the residents that live here. It is absurd what is happening. I'm calling in because I'm just a resident that is in complete disgust of what is occurring. And this morning, a relative of mine was on the Farewell side, and of course frustrations, I'm sure, is running high. And to make matters worse, we have workers, no doubt their tensions are running high as well, but there's absolutely no need of profanity and cussing at traveling public, but this has been occurring, and that is absolutely uncalled for and ridiculous. It's a build-up of frustration for the communities, isn't it?
Well, of course it is. And, emotions are sometimes hard to control, and they might boil over. Next thing you know, what might be just cussing and middle fingers thrown might end up being punches. So hopefully people can, just control their emotions as best possible, because that'll be one of the worst outcomes here. We can talk about the impact on the economy and the frustration and getting to your blood work appointment or what have you. But let's hope that does not happen. There was a pretty close call there with the last protest regarding the schedule, so can only hope that's not going to be part of the story here going forward.
It's, we also have to consider that on Change Islands, our teaching staff at the school here, the majority of the teaching staff is actually commuters. Some staff commute from Fogo Island to Change Islands daily, and our substitution staff actually, when they're called upon, has to travel from off the island. So the effect on that and the education that's happening here on island is another factor to consider.
Yeah, fair enough. So it'll have a variety of moving parts. It'll be a different set of circumstances for different people, regardless of what they're trying to accomplish. The question that I would have, and the question that I've posed many times, is this. So there's a logistical conversation to be had here. And, of course, if the decision had to be made to move the Legionnaire off the Bell Island run to the Fogo Island Change Islands Farewell run, then all the calls we'd be getting this morning would be from Bell Island. So there's pretty much a no-win situation available here to the minister. It would be helpful to understand the thought process behind the decision, because if the Legionnaire has been designated as a swing vessel to replace the veteran, then what changed? What is it?
Yes. I mean, ideally, the Legionnaire probably would be better suited here right now, for certain. And the 2 smaller vessels, keep the Beaumont and send the Astron W to Bell Island. In my opinion, for starters, you have to think about the actual ferry turnaround time is 2.5 hours. The turnaround schedule from Fogo to Change Islands to Farewell and back, it takes 2.5 hours, the turnaround time. So the amount of trips that's possible per day is limited. So the bigger the vessel that would be able to accommodate that, the better it would be. Whereas I'm not quite sure, and perhaps I'm being naive here, but I'm not sure what the turnaround time is for Bell Island, but I'm sure it's not 2.5 hours.
No, I've been over there 100 times, so it's 20 minutes maybe or something like that. So, and of course, the difference also versus what's going on where you folks are, there's significantly more commercial traffic on that run versus what's on the run between the Cove and Bell Island. That's for sure.
That's absolutely. And again, speaking from, like I mentioned, I'm a resident of Change Islands. We have no health care here on the island. There's no nurse. There's no clinic. There's no doctor stationed here. We have nothing in if someone cut their hand per se, they have to travel off the island. I mean, just a simple little thing sometimes that, can be fixed if you were on Fogo Island or if you were on Bellon. It's not happening here. That's detrimental to us, right?
Understood. Of course.
Yes. So, I mean, it's certainly putting added stress to this community. This past winter, I myself went through chemotherapy, and I chose to stay off the island for the duration of it because the stress that it placed on me to have to travel back and forth was just too immense. I just couldn't bear it. And part and parcel to that was the ferry, because are you going to get off the island for your appointments? If I got on the island and I was sick and there's no health care here, am I going to be able to get off the island? It's lots to consider, right?
Now, I don't mean this question to be unfair, to set it up like that. But if you've made decisions like that to stay off the island with the concerns about the reliability of the ferry service, has that ever given you and your family thought to leaving Change Islands?
It certainly has. It certainly has gave us, it's an eye-opener for me and my family to leave this island, no doubt about it. But you also have to consider, this is where I've built my life. This is also...
Oh, yes, I understand. And that's why I said right off the bat, I'm not trying to be unfair.
No, I understand. But this is where my home is. But yes, it's definitely consideration, because it's just getting too hard. And government is certainly, like Department of Transportation is making that much more difficult, isn't it? They're putting another nail in the coffin of that, so to speak.
We're going to see, and you don't have to react to this if you don't want to, like when the whole concept of regionalization went by the wayside, and we know that, the numbers of students in schools in some of the sparsely populated parts of the province, some of the islands that are serviced by the ferries and the reliability concern, the aging demographic, the lack of jobs in some areas, we're going to see a natural progression to the demise of some communities in rural Canada, and not just in this province, in rural Canada, which is really quite troubling because, I'm not suggesting that we need to go down the road to regionalization, but shared services and cooperation is going to have to be part of the solution, because if not, we're just going to see a natural, organic loss of more and more people, young families leaving because they don't have amenities or jobs or daycare or whatever the case may be. So, the things we can't control, like the ferries, is one thing. But, I think if we're being realistic, and my family is from rural Newfoundland, so I can't pretend I know all the different complexities and moving parts because I'm a bloody East End townie, but the writing's on the wall. And what we do about it and how we approach it and how government implements policy based on what we see unfolding in front of our very eyes is going to be a tricky piece of business. It's going to be emotional and frustrating, and whatever other adjective anyone would like to attach to it. Heather, anything else before I take a break here?
No, Patty. I think I've had my say, and thank you for your time.
I appreciate yours. Thank you, Heather. All right, take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye. All right, break time. When we come back, Councillor Davis is in the queue. I'm not sure what's on his mind this morning. Vera's in the queue to talk about dialysis, and then the member for Fogo Island Cape Friels is Jim McKenna. He's also there. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Councillor Tom Davis. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
So a couple of PSAs. We're keeping on the cleaning up, but of course we just had this massive cleanup that the province did on the Outer Ring Road. And disappointing, it revealed that there was actually even more garbage. You would think we'd be getting ahead of it year after year. It should be coming down and the messaging should be getting out, but apparently it's not. They had like over 1,000 pounds or whatever it was more garbage than they had the year before.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if I saw the numbers. Now some of it would be with unsecured loads heading to the dump. I think that's part of it. But there's also plenty of the garbage that was collected or picked up that was not bounced out of the back of a truck. It was thrown out the window of a car, which is remarkable to me. What's the mindset of driving down the road, you finish your coffee, you put down the window, and you throw the cup out of a speeding car on the Outer Ring Road? Amazing. Anyway.
Yeah, and we need to get the message out there. So again, it's still we got to cleaning up the city is an important task. So we had to clean up last week with that the CNLOPB participated in. It was great. Waterford River, the Waterford Valley Rotary's partnering with First Light on this Friday upcoming. We'd love to have other people join us at 10 o'clock. We're going to work our way west on the Waterford River from the Jerry Vitch Park, the dog park that's there, or you can even park in the overflow parking of the Bowring Park. And Sunday, there's a Churchill Square cleanup in conjunction with Monhope. So, just encouraging everybody to get out and do your part, whether you just grab a garbage bag and walk around your neighborhood or along the trail that you walk normally. You take some sort of bag with you, can pick up a few articles. It all makes a difference if we all do just a little bit. We won't have that. I was listening to someone on the radio saying that they had a group of people in from some community in rural Newfoundland, and the children couldn't believe how messy the city was. It's just embarrassing, everyone. I mean, it's just sad. Yeah.
And it's unnecessary. Okay, there's the PSA. What would you like to discuss this morning, Tom?
Well, I want to touch on the speed cameras, and I also want to go over to the city renaming the Discovery or St. John's Day. But I want to start with the speed cameras. I personally am really, really optimistic that what Minister Studley is trying to implement with the speed cameras. The big challenge is going to be dealing with it on the court side. When you look at the math, so for people's reference, the province has announced they're going to do 10 speed cameras. It looks like it's probably going to start on the Avalon Peninsula. The pilot they did last year, they had 2 cameras, and they moved them around every month. They moved the 2 cameras around, and during the 3-month period, they had 93,000 and so many odd infractions that they documented. And out of that, about 86%, you guys were talking about plates yesterday, and 86% of the plates were readable. So that's one thing. But even still, some areas, because every area that they had different readings. Some areas had as high as 96% and some as low as 82%. But how I envisage it, and I think the maximum strategy is for the province and the municipalities and the city to work together on a communication campaign so that we have this really strong messaging, but also 10 cameras, instead of that just being in 10 places that pretty quickly people will figure out where they are. I'm advocating for maybe 100 bases, because that's what they did last time. They moved them around. So they had multiple bases. So they didn't stay in the same place for the 3 months. So, and also not necessarily the places where people are more prone to speeding necessarily. Yes, speeding, but focusing on the areas, the residential areas, the place where there's the most danger to our residences, to our children, to the students that need to walk, the people that don't have transportation or just out recreating themselves, which we need to encourage, and our pets, obviously. So, the impact on a human being when it gets struck by a car at 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers, once you get up to 70 kilometers, the odds of surviving is almost zero. So what I'm advocating for is for the municipalities and obviously the cities where I'm focusing to not just pick 3 places or 10 places, but to pick 100 or maybe even more places, and let's spread them around and move them somewhat randomly so that people know, if you lend your vehicle to your child or yourself, you're out driving, or you lend your vehicle to an employee if you're a business, like in my case, there's no guarantees where there's going to be a speed camera. And when those $200 tickets start coming in, the average with 10 cameras, if the same thing happened last time happens this time, it's 150,000 tickets a month. At $200, which is what they're going to start these tickets at, $30 million a month times 12 is $360 million. Obviously, that's a lot of money. Hopefully, that will translate very quickly into change of behavior.
That's the trick. The revenue side is one thing. But to your point about people getting used to where they are, I don't think we can focus too keenly on that, and here's why I think that. because they're obliged by law to put up a warning sign that says you are entering a speed camera zone. So people get used to it all they want. But the fact of the matter is, even if we move them, it won't be under the secrecy or the cloak of night, because we're still going to have to put up the warning signs. So people will always know where the speed cameras are. So the concept of getting used to them is kind of done away with, knowing the fact that I'll be told up front, and obviously, and black and white, that here comes the speed camera zone. So moving them around, I think, will be helpful anyway, because, say for instance, the travel route I take on a normal basis, if there's no speed camera there, then my behavior is probably not going to be affected one iota, because the camera might never make it to where I drive. Versus the concept of moving them around, which I do think is a very helpful idea for a variety of reasons, but I don't think we should focus in on how, people get used to them, because you'll be told where they are. Everyone's going to know where they are.
Yeah, but if all these bases have warning signs, you don't know if there's going to be a camera there or not. Whether it's going to be active.
We do.
The other thing, I'm hoping that this is going to result in safer streets, less accidents, less pressure on healthcare, less lost work time, less long-term suffering. Insurance costs for individuals who are not following the rules most likely will go up, although the insurance company is going to have to make a decision on how they handle the fact, because this is not going to be tied to individuals. But definitely, if your vehicle is engaging in more risky activity, very good chance that the insurance company will interpret they don't really care who's driving it. Obviously, if people are slowing down, less fuel consumption, less wear and tear on vehicles, less wear and tear on the roads. I mean, there's just no bad part to this initiative.
I don't think there's either, but the thought that you said, the warning signs will be up, you can't have a warning sign where there is no active camera. That's my understanding of how this works. So if you move them, you have to move the sign and or remove the sign if the camera leaves that area. Because the concept is, well, let's just play footloose and fancy free. Let's play the gotcha game. And so what we could do, if that was allowable, was buy a bunch of fake cameras that don't work, period, and just say you're entering a speed camera zone. People would probably slow down, or at least hopefully slow down, and take their chances on getting a ticket. But the fact of the matter is, we're not allowed to do that. And so consequently, the sign will be indicative of you are actually entering a working camera, speed camera zone. That's how I understand how it played out. Because if it wasn't the case, like some people do on their private property and or their commercial property, they put up cameras that may not even be hooked up to anything. But people see the camera and think, well, I better not do anything bad here because I'm caught on candid camera. So that's how I understand the issue.
Okay, well, I think, again, within the city, we have a lot of questions, too. Obviously, we're concerned that somehow this will get downloaded municipally. We're hoping that's not going to happen. But, again, I'm very positive towards the initiative and really looking forward to the details and getting this in place as soon as possible.
For sure. Appreciate the time, Tom.
Okay, everyone. Take care. Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye. Yeah, because, when you think about it, if there was no warning signs, and that'd be straight up gotcha. But of course, the police already play gotcha. Like on the long weekend, you'd see visuals of police officers not in a cruiser, but up maybe behind a rock or behind a sign with their radar. So we already do play a bit of gotcha when it comes to trying to catch people speeding. And I'm not blaming the police officers. I think they're wise to do exactly this. They park in areas that are a little bit inconspicuous because some of that is gotcha as opposed to simply trying to keep the roads as safe as possible by reducing speed. But if we didn't have to have warning signs, then, just like I said, people would be putting up plastic cameras that are hooked up to nothing, and people might be bluffed into thinking, well, I better slow down here. So I just don't think that's the case. So the trick here will be, yes, we won't see the RNC bogged down in the traffic court system because the thought is that the private vendor would be the person representing the ticket in a traffic court. Yes, there'll be lots of court challenges. We've seen that in other jurisdictions. Cost recovery, given how I view people driving in and around where I live, should be pretty quick. So, again, if the whole general hope or the intent of these cameras is to simply slow people down, because Tom is right. As you increase speed, if we're talking about someone getting struck, once you once you're around 70 kilometers per hour and you strike somebody, and of course some of that has a direct relationship with how big someone is. Like a little kid is much more prone to being seriously injured or killed at lower speeds. But generally speaking, at 70 kilometers an hour, a human being getting struck is a very remote chance of survival. So again, let's just hope people slow down. It's almost too bad we have to go down this road, but between revenue and hopefully people just being a bit more mindful as members of the motoring public, Away we go. Okay, let's take a break. Appreciate your patience there, Mr. McKenna. He's the representative, the PC member for Fogo Island Cape Friels. I will imagine this is about the ferries. And Vera wants to talk to Alice. We'll get to those calls and more right after the news. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the newly sworn in member for Fogo Island Cape Friels. That's Jim McKenna. Good morning, Jim. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
Doing fine, sir. How about you?
Not too fussy with what's going on with our ferry system. We're into what I would consider a crisis out in Fogo Island, St. John's. It was a bad decision on the part of the Minister of Transportation to put a small boat at that capacity to operate 2 islands with all the traffic flow that we have from freight, fish, regular supplies, groceries, you name it, as well as doctor's appointments, cancer treatments, dialysis, you name it. It's all contingent on that ferry. And I think it's a very irrational and irresponsible decision on the part of the Minister of Transportation.
Have you spoken to your colleague, Minister Abbott?
Yes, I have. I spoke to Minister Abbott in the House the other day. That's my first hearing of it. It was the day before yesterday. He called me aside and told me that the Astron would be filling in for the next 2 weeks until the veteran got back in service. And I told him then it was ludicrous. It's not going to work. It's going to create chaos there, which is proven today. And I told him that it's going to put a lot of pressure on people out there. It's not going to work. Simply as that. It just can't work. It's impossible.
So he told you what the circumstances are. Did he give you any elaboration on the thought process to lead to this decision?
No. He just said that basically they got no boats. Their hands are tied. So I said, this doesn't make sense to me. The smallest of the 3 boats that's available is sent to deal with 2 islands with all the capacity of vehicles that that's down there. It's just not going to suit the run, none whatsoever. But he was not conversing with the people. Nobody knew this was happening. It was like just dropped in our laps. There was no time for any discussion on it. And I mean, when anything, there is solutions. You can work out things. There's compromises. And I know, as he told me and as he told people in the House here, that the Legionnaire is not going to fill in for Fogo Island because she belongs to Bell Island. This was just a verbal agreement back a few years ago, and they're not going to honor that agreement anymore. But I say to the minister, no one owns those boats, only the taxpayers of this province. And he is in control of that department. And he can make a decision where those boats can be shifted around to suit and compromise for situations. So I asked the minister to rethink the situation that we're into down there and at least send the Beaumont Hamel down with the Astron. And that would give us a bigger capacity of probably about 55 to 60 vehicles. And we will get by with that. It's not going to be the best situation, but it will work.
Jim, did he give you any indication about what he thinks or what they think the timeline is for the veteran to be back on the run?
Yeah, well, he said 2 weeks, but we heard all that before. Those 2 weeks goes into 4 weeks, and then it goes into 6 weeks. And I wouldn't be surprised, but we don't see the veteran until the end of June.
And then we're right into the peak of tourism season. And of course, it's not for me to say what the biggest concern is, but it is the volume of commercial traffic that makes this a different issue, and the folks living on Bell Island or working on Bell Island, look, I get it. And we do know the numbers, and this is remarkable. I always have a hard time wrapping my mind around this. There's more people travel across the Tickle to and fro than travel on Marine Atlantic through the course of a year, which is a remarkable number. But it's the reduced commercial traffic coming to and fro the Bell Island that allows for the minister to maybe rethink this decision. I'll be battered and pummeled by folks on Bell Island by even saying that out loud. But if we're talking about volume, capacity, and the real-life implications, I think Bell Island could navigate with 2 boats, albeit one smaller, much smaller than the Legionnaire. But there is a commercial traffic conversation here.
Yes, indeed. I mean, we were talking about the houses of fishery. I mean, it's detrimental to the stakeholders like the Fogo Island Co-op and the fish harvesters. I mean, we're already starting with the fishery. Now here's another plug put in there. We just this just doesn't make sense to me. When you can compromise, they put the Beaumont down with the Astron. I'm sure that we can work it out until the veteran gets back.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the only option, right? It's as fundamental as that. It's either what we're doing now or what you suggest. And the minister, we had tried to arrange time with him today. We're told that he can't join us this morning. Hopefully that means maybe tomorrow morning, because it'd be nice to hear it from the quote-unquote horse's mouth, is that exactly why this was chosen versus the option as you described. And look, I get it. These calls would simply be replaced by calls from Bell Island, and that's predictable because it's long been a concern, regardless of the ferry route we're talking about. People get frustrated when there are interruptions, whether it be with the vessel out of service and or the weather or the lack of communication, whatever the case may be. So I'm setting myself up for those types of calls, but so be it. That's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, well, Paddy, me right away. We started off there this morning, and they ran into a mechanical problem.
Yeah,
I don't think she got the first run completed yet. If so, it's only about now that she's getting back to Fogo Island. With that being said, who knows if this is not going to happen again today? We're down to 5 trips a day with about a 25-car capacity for both islands, and the traffic flow down there. It's not even like touching it at all. What's needed to be there. So they have to sit down and rethink this over. This is a crisis, and I mean, if this could even end up being have the call the state of emergency for both Fogo Island and Change Islands if this situation is not resolved.
I appreciate the time, Jim. Anything else you'd like to say while we have you?
No, well, all I'm going to say, I think all this stems from the 2 by-elections. I think we're being penalised, and in my books, that's not democracy.
We'll get the minister on ASAP. Appreciate the time, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Paddy. Have a great day.
The very same to you. Bye-bye. That's Jim McKenna. He's the PC member for Fogo Island Cape Friels. Let's go to line number 1. Vera, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you.
I'd like to talk about the healthcare system. I'm a dialysis patient in St. Anthony. Last Monday, I went down and had my dialysis done. And my line came out. So on Tuesday, they had me to go back to St. Anthony again to get my line taken out. When I got there, the doctor didn't want to take the line out, and the doctor in St. John's had recommended that they take it out. Then Wednesday, so I was there waiting 6 hours on Tuesday. Then I went back on Wednesday. I was waiting 10 hours to get a bed to be admitted. And I was supposed to be airlifted to St. John's, and I never got in till Sunday. So I missed my Thursday's treatment. I missed my Saturday's treatment. I got in St. John's, medevac in on Sunday afternoon, and they did my port on Sunday, and they gave me a 3-hour run. The treatment I do a 4-hour. And then they did another one on Monday. And then I was discharged from the hospital and had to find my home way back home. I had to get a plane ticket because I wasn't capable of coming by road. And I think that the healthcare system is really terrible. I mean, there should be better things that they can do for the patients than what they are doing. I mean, 5 days, do you think that 5 days that a plane couldn't land in St. Anthony Airport to transport me to St. John's to get my life-saving dialysis? Like, this is the 9th time that I have had to travel to St. John's to get this port put in.
Obviously, the furthest thing from ideal. So when you miss, I'm speaking with Vera from Flowers Cove, right?
Yes.
Okay. Vera, when the line comes out or you miss days worth of your dialysis treatment, so what does that mean real life for your health?
Well, it means that I retain fluids and I get very short-winded. And like the other day, I went for a little walk here in the hospital. And if there wasn't a chair, Andy, I had to go and sit down because, like, I was so short-winded that I couldn't make it back to my room without taking the spell. And, it's just outrageous. Like, people's lives that they're dealing with. It's not a playtime. That's the way I think it, that the government thinks that people's lives is playtime.
Well, hopefully that's not the case. So, Vera, I know that there's a number of you. I can't remember what you told me last time, maybe 4 or 6 patients from Flowers Cove that have to make the trek to St. Anthony, and you were petitioning the government to have a clinic built in Flowers Cove. Now, of course, we know full well that in some smaller parts of the province, the government is probably never going to establish big clinics and or dialysis clinics. Not to say that that's a good thing, but that's seemingly where we are. So did you ever get any response from anybody about your petition or your plea?
Not really. Krista Howell, she did come back, and she was supposed to have a meeting with us ever since January, and this is in July, that she has some funding for a bus to transport us back and forth to, if she could get it in place for a bus transportation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we haven't heard nothing from her or since, and we've made several calls, but anyway, I think that's going. I can't remember the exact dollars. I believe it was something like 100,000 or something like that they had funding for this bus. But I don't know what really happened to the money or the bus because there's still no tax to the bus or if anybody took it or what. We're just in a loop about that.
Yeah, no, that can be helpful when we're talking about the highway travel, especially at night or during the winter. So that, of course, would be helpful. I'll do some follow-up and see where the status is of that potential piece of transportation being added, because I kind of lost sight of that one. I lost track of it.
Yeah, like I said, now I haven't heard tell of her since. So, yes, their office did call me back the other day because I phoned Tom Osborne's office and I phoned Krista Howell's office to see what they could do to try to get me in St. John's, to get my line put in so that I could get my dialysis. Now, I also have a harm specialist, but he doesn't work, they're not getting good flow from it because of where my veins are so small. And so anyway, I think that the government should be putting more into the healthcare system than putting it into things that's not necessary. It's people's lives that they're dealing with, And the doctor didn't even want to take out my line there in Flowers Cove. I never got took out till Saturday. And the doctor in St. John's went and took out on Tuesday. And they were supposed to call the doctor in St. John's and take my line out because it was no good there, right? Because it was falling out. And because I got what we call a thin line. Mine is in the groin area, right?
Okay.
I'm not a candidate for, there's this one now that you can put in the leg. I'm not a candidate for that. I'm not a candidate for a lot of things because I got so many health issues. But, for my dialysis, it is something that is keeping me alive and keeping me mobile and whatever. So, I don't want to lose that part of my life just because of neglect from the government, which they should be out helping people to do more things than they are doing.
Fair enough. I go back to the money bit. You know, we are talking about people's health and welfare, but it's just remarkable to me that the system is the way it is when we spend about $4 billion. There's only like 530,000 of us. $4 billion on healthcare, and people are still struggling. It's kind of remarkable, really. Vera, anything else you want to say this morning before I take the last break of the day?
Okay. Well, I guess you'll be hearing from me again because, like, you know, I don't intend to give up. They think that, you know, that after a while you will give up and say, oh, well, you're not going to. But, I mean, like, if you don't fight and keep on fighting, that you're not going to get nothing. But then when election time comes, that they get to your door promising you everything and whatever, like, you know, don't need that. You don't want promises. You want facts, and you want what is the benefit of the people, not going to spend the $500 or the $1,000 on meals, which is, you know, for the government people and stuff like that. I mean, those big parties and stuff like that. All this money, I mean, this is the taxpayers' money.
Oh, of course, the government has no money. It's all our money.
Yes, right. And I mean, like, you know, it should be put into our needs.
Vera, I appreciate your time. Hope you're doing well. Stay in touch.
Okay, then I will. And thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. You take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Here we go. All right, final break of the morning. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Well, someone just wrote an email saying, did I say earlier in the program that there's someone going back in a deep-sea semi-submersible to the Titanic? The short answer is yes. So apparently this Ohio billionaire, he's a real estate investor named Larry Connor. He and some other guy who was a co-founder of Triton Submarines, a guy named Patrick Leahy, they're going down the 2.3 miles to the shipwreck site. Now, there's some thoughts that we should just leave that site alone, period. I'm sure there's a lot of curiosity with getting a look at the Titanic, and it's been done successfully in much bigger vessels than we're talking about with the Titan and the Ocean Gate tragedy. So the emailer went on to ask, you know, what was the reference to search and rescue? And again, I took a few knocks for saying what I said, but here goes. So the fact of the matter is, for search and rescue, if you get lost berry picking, or you get turned around in the woods, or you get lost on your snowmobile, or you slip and fall on a trail, and we have to send out some support, whether it be ground search and rescue and or a cormorant, that's one thing. But when people take on such unbelievably risky pieces of adventurism, like going down to the Titanic, or like rowing across the Atlantic in a rowboat, you know the possibility or the potential to need search and rescue is very, very real. And it costs millions of dollars. The recovery efforts that went in between the Americans and us, Canadians, to find the pieces of the wreckage of the Titan, I mean, my thought was that if you're going to take on said risk, heightened risk, that maybe, just maybe, you should have some insurance in place so that you're responsible or liable for some of the financial costs if indeed there's a search and rescue capacity and or a recovery mission. Now, I've been told that's really quite cruel because, you know, those resources are there for those specific reasons. But again, isn't it different of going down to the Titanic versus getting turned around in the woods? I would suggest it's completely two different things. And so, yeah, that's what we brought forward. Anyway, you want to talk about it, we can do it. There's another story that I've meant to get to every day this week, well, since Monday anyway. And it's about one of the initial reports that has come from the National Security and Intelligence Review Agency, NSERA. And this is based on the work that's been done by Justice Marie Hogue regarding foreign interference into our elections, which, you know, none of the reports have, as of yet, said that any of the foreign interference caused any change in the outcome of the election, but people worry about the integrity of the elections and people's faith in the system. So a few things. People keep saying and writing me things like, you know, well, the Dominion voting machines are rigged by the Liberals. Well, the fact of the matter is we don't use them, so we don't have to worry so much about that. You know, that's been part of the American conversation, and of which, of course, Dominion sued Fox and were really quite successful in the compensation they received. But here we vote on paper, and we strike an X with a pencil. It's counted by hand, and scrutineers from all candidates and all their parties are allowed in the room for the counting. But the issue here regarding the first report from the justice that's at the chair of the inquiry, and remember, her appointment was supported by all parties. So they agreed that she was absolutely up to the task. The problem that's been identified here quite clearly, and we'll try to dig into it a little deeper tomorrow morning, is how the information did not get to its intended target. And oftentimes that means the Prime Minister's office. So the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor far too often deemed the intelligence to be A, either unreliable, and that's not that person's job to make that determination. CSIS is the intelligence agency. And or B, didn't meet the level required to bring it to the Prime Minister's attention. That's all complete nonsense. We've seen what it meant in the United States regarding people's lack of trust in the election system. So we'll dig into a bit more tomorrow. But the report is quite damning based on process. Not exactly what the outcome was or the results were, but we've got to make sure that regardless of whatever party you support, because it's going to change hands between whichever parties, likely the Conservatives and the Liberals, that this is more important than the politics or the political party you support. Because if we don't have continued faith in the system, then that's the beginning of the quote-unquote end. All right, good show today. Big thanks to everyone who supports the program. And we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, Beth Fagan, who did a great job today, thank you, Beth. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the VOCM Big Land FM radio network. Stingray radio stations. Follow.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No